Hello indie game fans, while I do love my action roguelites, we might have peaked in 2020 due to Hades, where there are a fewer than usual number of games in development for this genre. Still, I managed to find some cool games that have never been shown off on this channel, as well as some returning favourites that I'm very excited about. Let's begin with Abyssal Mirage, an action roguelite that does have quite an interesting camera angle and perspective, which is different from other games in this genre. It's a pixel art title with some good looking sprites, great action, as well as a healthy dose of magic, showing that the developer has got the focus right due to how good the action looks. However, I do believe this is from a Chinese developer, so certain things may be lost in translation, case in point being the story setup or lack thereof, but the Steam page doesn't explain who this character is and what are her goals. However, me being me, for the pixel art and action alone, this gets a spot on the list. An upcoming space western title that looks fantastic is TombStar, looking to have sweet top-down action with a nice variety of weapons and enemies. It has you playing as a gunslinger in space, entering enemy territory in order to hunt down members of a criminal gang, where the Old West-inspired setting but sci-fi has to be the most interesting part. This does also come to us from the developer of the mobile hit Rogue-lite, Crossy Road, so I'm interested to see how his ideas will manifest in a game like this. If you love classic action roguelites like Enter the Gungeon, be sure to keep an eye on Bibots, one that is certainly following in the footsteps of that game with the absolute swarms of bullets, but does have its own idea on things to keep it interesting. The titular Bibots are actually special forms that our hero can transform into after filling a meter, where it promises to have a variety of such forms, each of which is supposed to play differently. Other than that, the action looks sleek with a nice perk and skill tree focused upgrade system, definitely showing some potential which I'm looking forward to. A returning favourite is Ember Knights, a melee-focused pixel art action roguelite that simply looks fantastic, where most interestingly, it does seem to be built for co-op, although single player is a possibility as well. I like the designs of the characters, with some sleek looking action as well, and while it does look like a fairly standard entry, I'm looking forward to what clever ideas the developers have in order to make this their own. It does still have a fall 2021 release window on Steam, but I think that has passed, so I'm calling it a 2022 release. Another new title to the channel is Deflector, one that, as the name proposes, has you deflecting enemy projectiles as one of the main mechanics, critical of course in this bullet hell entry. It does have some sleek art with a free-form upgrade system that allows your character to evolve and combine abilities, where this comes fast and hard with a January early access release date. An action roguelite that I stumbled upon is Rules of Alchemy, one that looks to incorporate elements from the chaotic multiplayer title Magicka, in that you're allowed to mix and match elemental spells and combine them in clever ways. I love the idea of combining spells or elements, since it is always fun to discover the final effect, whether it be gems in Path of Exile or even the weapons in Gunstar Heroes, so to see this in a roguelite is pretty neat. I'm not totally sold on the visuals, since it isn't exactly pretty, but definitely one to watch for the mechanics alone. A new title that I'm very excited to share is Beyond the Long Night, one where the developer did reach out to me, and I was saving it for an occasion just like this. Most interestingly, this is a side-scrolling action roguelite, but is not a platformer, where you play as a little man that is floating around on balloons with controls that look like they resemble more of a shoot 'em up or twin-stick shooter. As such, it's a breath of fresh air in a crowded genre, and it doesn't hurt that the pixel art looks fantastic and that the main character does resemble that from Downwell as well. This developer did even go the extra mile to explain the roguelite structure and that our character is caught up in a time loop, which is always something that I appreciate in this genre, making this a title of interest. I might be contradicting myself coming off the last game shown off, but I do still have a soft spot for the very classic side-scrolling roguelite platformer, where the title of interest here is Duil. Of course, the pixel art is a highlight with some great looking action and animations, although everything is just a little bit too grimdark. Without a doubt, some people will point to this being a Dead Cells clone, but I'll give the developer the opportunity to prove themselves, so the ball is in their court. I literally just covered Swordcery 2 days ago, and I was not messing around when saying that this has quickly climbed the rankings of roguelites that I'm looking forward to. Despite the rather generic title and standard high fantasy setting, I do think that the art and animations in this are gorgeous, and it's no surprise since it comes to us from animators who previously worked on God of War. I'm curious as to how much variety there will be here, since there are multiple sword types and different character classes with a magic component in the sorcery part of the name, looking like a fantastic title that I cannot wait to play.
Fudo the prisoner. Fudo the weak. Death will not release you from the shackles, no matter how far you run.
I last talked about IMMORTAL and the death that follows in a video covering new trailers, where this has an interesting backstory since the developers were screwed over by their publisher and previous employer when making the action title Aeon Must Die. So at least it was comforting to know that that game didn't sell extremely well, where if you want to support the original team, this is the game to watch. It does have a fantastic art style and is somehow a roguelite side-scrolling beat-em-up, being a very nice change of pace from the platformer and top-down variants in this genre, so of course it gets a spot. Let's kick off the top 5 with Warm Snow, another game new to the channel which has an amazing look and comes to us from a Chinese developer tapping on the mythology and influences from their culture. We've been seeing an increasing number of games from Chinese developers, which is for the better in my opinion, since we get to experience new things, where this does share a similar vibe to that of Eastern Exorcist. A strange phenomenon has occurred in this world where a warm snow that never melts spreads across the land, and those who inhaled this substance were transformed into monsters. So you play as a warrior, fighting through in order to put an end to the source of this dark magic, looking to have excellent action, which makes this of interest.
You took everything from us. Our lives, our memories, our freedom.
One of the most gorgeous pixel art titles in development is Astral Ascent, one that I have a particular affinity for since it involves personifications of the star signs and astrology where you fight to escape an astral prison. It comes to us from the developer of the 2D Souls-like Dark Devotion, so the pedigree alone makes this of interest and I cannot wait to play.
I promise you, one day, we will free ourselves.
A no-brainer pixel art pick that I've been looking forward to is Loot River, so it's no surprise that it shows up here once again. This combines, most interestingly, Souls-like strategic combat with a puzzle element where you're able to manipulate the platforms that you stand on, definitely having a unique twist which I'm curious as to how it will play out, especially in the boss fights. The look of this game is fantastic as well, making this very high up on my list. Surprise! Some of you might not have expected to see Rogue Legacy 2 here, since it technically released in 2020 in early access, but with the way things are going, I'm fairly certain that it will release in 1.0 next year. If you're not familiar, this is the sequel to one of the best roguelite platformers ever, where you play as successive generations of heroes, all working together on the same grand quest. Each new character has some unique trait or mutation, whether it be gigantism or dwarfism, IBS or colorblindness, all of which translates quite cleverly into affecting how the game looks and plays. This has been chugging along in early access with significant content updates, with a tentative full release in Q2 next year, where if polished up and completed, could potentially be Game of the Year material. A title that certainly gained a lot of attention when it was first revealed is Cult of the Lamb, an action roguelite with a wonderfully dark meta progression element as you build up your cult. Play as a lamb saved from slaughter by a mysterious dark force, now having to create a cult that appeases this very entity, with some of the most amazing looking art and animations as well. It comes to us from developer Massive Monster, which I appreciate for their game The Adventure Pals, where a little bit of a concerning fact about this game is that this is another Devolver Digital published title who seem to be sucking up a lot of talent, so I hope that things don't go in a bad direction with that company, but on the game's merits alone, it takes the #1 spot. For more upcoming indie games for 2022, watch these videos and I will see you after the jump.